The sensors screamed. Red alerts flashed across the Ethelred's bridge, bathing the scaled faces of the Saurian crew in a pulsating crimson glow. Klaxons blared, a discordant symphony of impending doom that vibrated through the very deck plates beneath their clawed feet. Then it appeared. In a region of space previously charted as utterly empty, a warship materialized from the quantum foam, an impossible behemoth of dark metal and jagged edges. But it wasn't the ship's sheer, overwhelming size that silenced the bridge, it was the energy signature. Raw, untamed, and focused with laser-like precision, it pulsed from the warship's core, pure, unadulterated rage. "Report." Captain Vorek's voice cut through the cacophony, his reptilian eyes narrowed, scanning the chaotic displays. "Unknown vessel, Captain," a junior officer stammered, his scales shifting nervously from emerald to olive. "Designation: impossible to ascertain. Size: exceeding all known classifications. The energy signature: off the charts." The officer gestured to a waveform display. Jagged peaks and valleys erupted across the screen, a visual representation of nearly unleashed fury. It was unlike anything the Saurians had ever encountered. They had cataloged thousands of energy signatures, from the gentle hum of a dying star to the destructive blast of a supernova, but this was something else entirely. It felt malevolent. Vorek's tail twitched, a sign of deep unease. "Quarantine the sensorium. I want a full-spectrum analysis. And summon xeno-archaeologist Luna to the bridge, immediately." Luna arrived moments later, her slender frame gliding through the bridge doors with an almost unnerving grace. Her scales were a calm, cool turquoise, a stark contrast to the agitated greens and browns of the bridge crew. "You requested my presence, Captain." Vorek gestured towards the main view screen where the image of the warship dominated their vision. "We have encountered an anomaly, a warship of unknown origin. Its energy signature is troubling." Luna tilted her head, her golden eyes, vertically slit pupils widening slightly as she studied the vessel. "Troubling how, Captain?" "The preliminary analysis indicates intense aggression," Vorek said, choosing his words carefully. "Focused rage. I am concerned about the threat it poses." Luna approached the sensorium, her long fingers dancing across the control panel. "Perhaps it is a relic, Captain, a vessel from a civilization lost to time. Its energy signature may simply be a residual echo of a long-forgotten conflict." "Regardless," Vorek said, his voice hardening, "we must proceed with extreme caution." He paused, then added, "Attempt to establish communication." The Ethelred transmitted a standard hailing frequency, but the warship remained silent, an unmoving monolith in the void. Further scans revealed extensive damage to the hull, deep gouges, melted armor plating, and weapon emplacements that had been torn apart. This warship had seen battle, and plenty of it. Luna turned to Vorak, her eyes gleaming with intellectual curiosity. "Captain, I request permission to board the vessel." "A thorough examination is crucial to understanding its origins and assessing its potential threat." Vorek hesitated, his gaze fixed on the warship. "I am not comfortable with this, Doctor. The risks are significant, but the potential rewards are even greater, Captain," Luna countered, her voice tinged with urgency. "This could be a discovery of unparalleled importance. We cannot simply ignore it because of fear." Vorek considered her words, his reptilian features unreadable. He knew Luna's thirst for knowledge was insatiable, but he also respected her intellect. After a long moment, he sighed. "Very well, Doctor. I authorize a small away team, but proceed with extreme caution. And I want constant updates." "Of course, Captain," Luna replied, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. As the away team began their preparations, Luna paused before the sensorium once more, her gaze drawn back to the energy signature display. The waveform still pulsed with raw, untamed fury. She ran another diagnostic, focusing on the interior of the warship. A faint, residual trace of the rage signature lingered within its darkened corridors. A shiver ran down her spine, a sensation she rarely experienced. It wasn't fear exactly, but something deeper, a strange resonance, a flicker of recognition. Just then a blip appeared on the Ethelred's long-range sensors. "Captain," a new voice, sharp with alarm, called out. "We're detecting a fluctuation in the quantum foam. Near the warship, something else is out there." Vorek's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "What else is out there?" "Out there." The plasma torch hissed, finally biting through the last layer of the warship's outer hull. With a groan of protesting metal, the section gave way, revealing a jagged, circular opening into the black abyss beyond. Luna activated her helmet lamp, the beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. A sudden drop in temperature assaulted them, a biting cold that seemed to seep into their bones. And then there was the silence. Not the absence of sound, but a thick, pervasive silence that pressed in on them, muffling even the hiss of their own respirators. "Atmospheric integrity compromised," chirped the team's diagnostics drone, a small, hovering sphere. "Oxygen levels at 18%. Temperature minus 40 degrees Celsius. Recommend immediate environmental seal." "Override," Luna commanded, her voice tight in her helmet calm. "We proceed. Seal the breach behind us." The team moved with practiced efficiency, deploying a temporary energy shield across the opening. Luna took the lead, her pulse rifle held at the ready. The corridor beyond was a nightmare of twisted metal and exposed wiring. Scars from ancient battles crisscrossed the walls, deep gouges and scorch marks that spoke of brutal close-quarters combat. Sections of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking their path and forcing them to climb over piles of debris. Initial sensor sweeps painted a grim picture: widespread structural damage, energy fluctuations that spiked and died without pattern, but no immediate signs of life. No active systems beyond the barest trickle of power. "I'm detecting localized pockets of intense energy," reported Jax, the team's sensor specialist. "Designation: Rage. Concentrated in specific areas of the ship, mostly around what appear to be former crew quarters and weapon emplacements." As they moved deeper, they came across a holographic display, flickering erratically. Luna adjusted the frequency, stabilizing the image. Fragmented scenes of combat flickered to life, humans locked in desperate struggles with unseen enemies, their faces contorted in fury and terror. Close-quarters battles fought with knives and improvised weapons. The images were chaotic, brutal, and deeply disturbing. "Recommend we proceed with extreme caution," Luna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The atmosphere within this vessel is unsettling, and these energy signatures are unlike anything I've encountered. Be vigilant, report any anomalies." Thrax, the team's empath, shifted uneasily. His scaled hide, usually a vibrant green, had dulled to a sickly olive. "Commander," he rasped, "I don't like this place. I can feel it. A palpable sense of suffering. It's overwhelming." Luna suppressed a sigh. "Speculation, Thrax. Focus on the data. Your sensitivities are valuable, but they must be grounded in verifiable facts." They continued their advance, reaching what appeared to have been the warship's armory. Weapon racks lined the walls, filled with advanced projectile weapons. Rifles, pistols, and larger cannon-like devices, all designed for close combat. Luna examined one of the rifles, its sleek, black casing cold to the touch. "Fascinating," she murmured. "These weapons are designed for maximum impact at close range, but the projectile composition, it's not optimized for kinetic energy. It's designed to disrupt neural pathways to inflict maximum psychological trauma." They moved on, eventually reaching a large circular chamber, the command center. A holographic projector dominated the room, displaying a star chart. Luna enhanced the image, revealing a vast section of the galaxy marked in red. "This region," she said, her voice tight, It's the territory of a species designated in the ship's logs as the Voidborn. I'm running the data now. Stand by." The drone chirped, displaying decrypted log entries. The Voidborn, Luna read aloud, a parasitic species, consumes entire worlds, resistant to conventional weaponry, psychological warfare deemed most effective. Luna's breath hitched. She noticed something else, a chilling detail. The projected course of the vessel. It was faint, almost erased by time, but undeniably there. By the stars. Luna breathed. This ship. It was headed towards our home system. Thrax gasped, clutching his head. The screams, endless screams, burning worlds. He collapsed to the floor, his body convulsing. Thrax. Luna barked. Medical unit report. He's experiencing a psychological episode, Commander, the medic reported, his voice crackling over the comm. Overwhelmed by residual emotional energy, I'm administering a sedative. Luna frowned. Psychological stress, unfortunate but irrelevant. We have a mission to complete. They pressed on, reaching the warship's primary weapon system. An enormous cannon-like structure dominated the chamber, radiating an intense, palpable energy. The air crackled with static. Luna approached cautiously, her sensors working overtime. This weapon, she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and horror. It's not designed to destroy physical targets. It's designed to manipulate emotions on a planetary scale. Luna accessed the weapon's control panel, her fingers flying across the ancient interface. Decrypted schematics filled her vision. It's designed to induce a permanent state of terror and despair, she whispered, to break their will to fight, to extinguish their spirit. As Luna examined the weapon's controls, a holographic image flickered to life on a nearby display. A human crew member, his face gaunt, his eyes burning with an expression of pure, unadulterated hatred. He stared directly at her, his gaze piercing and malevolent. The holographic image flickered, the human crew member's hateful stare stuttering, freezing for a disquieting moment before looping back to the beginning of its cycle. The distortion amplified the rage in its eyes, turning it into a digital nightmare. Scan the area around the projector, Luna barked, her voice tight. I want to know where that recording originated. The team moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons raised, sensors sweeping the walls. Thrax, still visibly shaken, moved more slowly, his hand trembling slightly as he adjusted his scanner. It was Jax who found it, a seam in the wall barely visible beneath a layer of corroded plating. With a grunt, he forced the panel open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, nestled amongst a tangle of wires and decaying components, lay a device unlike anything they had seen before. It was roughly spherical, crafted from a dark, obsidian-like material with intricate patterns etched across its surface. Wires snaked out from its core, connecting to the holographic projector and other systems within the command center. Report, Luna commanded, her eyes fixed on the device. Preliminary analysis indicates a neural interface, Jax reported, his voice hushed. It appears to have been used to amplify and project emotional energy. Rage, Thrax supplied, his voice barely a whisper. It was used to amplify their rage. As they examined the device, the air in the chamber seemed to thicken. The soft hum of their equipment began to fluctuate, replaced by a discordant whine. The holographic image flickered more violently, the hateful stare intensifying. Energy levels spiking, Jax announced, his voice strained. The rage energy is increasing. Thrax stumbled back, clutching his head. The war. I see them. The Voidborn. Vivid hallucinations flooded his mind, twisted visages of the enemy he had fought against, the horrors of a war he thought he had left behind. Thrax, report, Luna ordered, her voice sharp with concern. I can't. They're here. He gasped, his eyes wide with terror. Thrax, you need to return to the ship, Luna said, her voice softening. You require medical evaluation. No, he protested, shaking his head violently. I can help, I understand. I remember. Luna frowned, her concern growing. She activated her personal data pad, accessing the ship's archives. After a few moments, she found what she was looking for, recovered logs from the ancient human warship. As she scrolled through the fragmented entries, she began to understand the true horror of the weapon they had unleashed. The logs detailed the psychological toll the war had taken on the human crew, the constant fear, the unrelenting hatred, the slow descent into madness. One entry, highlighted in faded crimson ink, caught her eye: void-born physiology. Susceptible to extreme emotional manipulation. Weaponization complete. Before she could process the implications, a high-pitched whine filled the chamber. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Automated defense turrets concealed within the walls whirred to life, their targeting lasers locking onto the away team. "Take cover," Luna yelled, diving behind a console as energy bolts ripped through the air. The team scattered, seeking what little protection the command center offered. The turrets fired with relentless precision, tearing through bulkheads and sending sparks flying. "The ship's defense systems are still active," Jax shouted over the din of battle. "Despite the damage." Luna scrambled to her feet, accessing the ship's systems through her data pad. "I'm trying to disable the turrets," she yelled, "but the systems are heavily encrypted, fragmented." Realizing her team was outmatched, Luna activated her comms. "This is Luna to Daunting. We are under attack by automated defense systems within the command center. Request immediate extraction and expert assistance. I repeat, request immediate extraction and expert assistance." She paused, then added a critical request. "Include any available human experts who may have experience with ancient human technology or warfare. Their insights may be invaluable." The distress signal reached a nearby Saurian research vessel, the Curiosity. In the mess hall, Anthony Wilson, a human historian specializing in ancient warfare, paused mid-bite, his ears perking up at the mention of ancient human technology. He approached the Saurian captain, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Captain, with all due respect, I couldn't help but overhear that distress call. I've studied ancient human warfare for most of my life. I may be able to offer insights that could save those lives." The Saurian captain, a stern-faced female with scales the color of polished jade, regarded him with skepticism. "A human historian, what could you possibly offer in a combat situation?" "Knowledge," Anthony replied, his voice firm. "Understanding the enemy, their tactics, their technology. It's all there in the historical record." The captain hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Very well. I authorize your transport to the Daunting. But understand this, Wilson. If you become a liability, you will be left behind." Back on the warship, Luna and her team continued to evade the automated defenses, their situation growing increasingly desperate. Energy bolts ricocheted around them, each shot a near miss. Suddenly, the screech of a shuttle sounded overhead, followed by a deafening crash. The vessel, damaged and spiraling out of control, slammed into the command center, sending debris flying. Anthony Wilson, disoriented but alive, stumbled out of the wreckage, coughing amidst the smoke and sparking wires. Weapons fire flashed all around him, illuminating the shattered remains of the once great command center. The air crackled with deadly energy. He could feel the pulse of the rage weapon still radiating its awful power. "What have I got myself into?" he wondered, his knees going weak. The shuttle doors buckled inward, twisted metal screaming as the automated turrets found their mark. A cascade of sparks erupted around Anthony as he scrambled from the wreckage, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning circuits and ozone. Projectiles ripped through the console beside him, each impact a deafening clang. "Get down!" A voice, sharp and alien, cut through the chaos. Energy bolts sizzled past Anthony, impacting the turrets and momentarily disrupting their fire. Luna's team, their scaled hides gleaming under the emergency lights, laid down suppressing fire, creating a narrow window of opportunity. Anthony, fueled by adrenaline, lunged behind a massive, wrecked console, its holographic displays shattered and sparking. The turret fire relentlessly chewed at the surrounding metal, each impact vibrating through his bones. He risked a peek. The turrets, mounted on articulated arms, tracked his every movement with unnerving precision. Luna approached cautiously, her weapon raised, her reptilian eyes narrowed. "Human, identify yourself, state your purpose." Her voice was a guttural rasp amplified by her helmet's comm system. "Wilson," Anthony shouted over the din. "Anthony Wilson, historian. I specialize in ancient human warfare. I can help you disable those turrets." Luna's expression remained skeptical, but a flicker of something desperation crossed her face. "Prove it. We've been trying for cycles. Disable them or you're just another piece of scrap." She gestured to her team. "Keep him covered. One wrong move." The implication hung heavy in the smoke-filled air. Crawling forward, Anthony reached the ruined turret control panel. Wires sparked and sputtered, bathing the area in flickering light. He recognized the archaic programming protocols, the brutal efficiency of the combat algorithms. This wasn't just defense, it was annihilation. He muttered to himself, tracing the command pathways with a trembling finger. "Come on, where are you?" He located the primary access port, inserting a makeshift interface cable salvaged from the wreckage. He began inputting a shutdown sequence, using command codes he'd spent years studying ancient human directives, designed for a war long past. The turrets paused, a moment of blessed silence. Then, with a whirring growl, they recalibrated. Their targeting parameters tightened, their movements became faster, more aggressive. The air crackled with renewed energy. "They're adapting," Luna hissed, firing another volley. "They're learning from your attempts." As if on cue, a new threat emerged. From the shadows, sleek obsidian defense drones detached from the walls, their energy weapons charged. They swarmed the command center, overwhelming Luna's team's defenses. Energy bolts flashed, illuminating the carnage as the team scattered for cover. "They're not just defending," Anthony yelled, diving for cover as a drone strafed his position. "They're hunting us." He scrambled back to Luna, his face pale. The rage energy. It's not just a weapon, it's a form of consciousness. It's controlling the ship. Luna stared at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. "Consciousness, preposterous. Think about it." Anthony insisted, dodging another volley of fire. "The ship is responding to our presence, our perceived threat levels. It's sensing our fear, our aggression." Luna considered this, her reptilian eyes narrowing. "Order your team to cease fire," she commanded. "Maintain a non-threatening posture. Let's see if the human's theory holds water." The team, battered and bruised, complied. The defense drones slowed their advance, their weapons still charged, but their movements less frantic. They scanned the team, their optical sensors glowing ominously, but they didn't fire. "It's working." "Partially," Anthony said, his voice tight with hope, "but it's not enough. We need to do more than just suppress our aggression. We need to project something else." "Project what exactly?" Luna asked, her skepticism still evident. "Peace," Anthony said, his voice barely a whisper. "Remorse. We need to use the ship's own systems to project a signal of peace to calm the rage consciousness." Luna scoffed. "You're suggesting we reason with a warship, with rage?" "It's our only chance," Anthony pleaded. Luna hesitated, then nodded grimly. "There's a neural interface device, designed for communication with corrupted AI. It's a long shot, but..." She activated her comm. "Reddick, prepare the neural interface. We're going to try something unorthodox." As Luna's team prepped the device, Anthony guided her through the calibration process, his hands hovering over the controls. "Think of it as emotional translation," he explained. "Ancient human emotional expression, calibrated for maximum impact." Luna, her brow furrowed in concentration, adjusted the settings. As they activated the device, the rage energy intensified. The command center flooded with vivid holographic images, swirling and coalescing into a chaotic maelstrom of fire and death. The images sharpened, resolving into a single, overwhelming vision. a human colony, vibrant and teeming with life, consumed by a swarm of obsidian ships. The Voidborn. Their ships were insectal, nightmarish things, tearing through the colony's defenses like paper. The faces of the colonists, contorted in terror, flashed before them, their screams echoing in the minds of everyone present. Then the final devastating blow, a wave of annihilation energy washing over the planet, leaving nothing but a charred husk. The vision ended with a wave of intense grief and fury so potent, so all-consuming, that Anthony staggered back, gasping for air, the weight of a civilization's rage pressing down on him. The vision slammed them both. A wave of nausea rolled over Anthony, blurring the edges of his sight with phantom afterimages of fire and twisted metal. His ears rang, a high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter his skull. He tasted ash. Luna gasped, her scaled hand flying to her temple. Her multifaceted eyes flickered, struggling to refocus. Energy. A massive spike, she rasped, her voice tight. Correlated directly with the vision, the rage signature. It's real. Anthony shook his head, trying to clear the lingering echoes of grief and fury. He focused on the holographic display, noticing something he'd missed before. Wait, those formations, the Voidborn. They're not just haphazard attacks. This was planned, strategically advanced planning. He pointed to a series of interlocking triangles within the swirling chaos of the simulated battle. I've seen those tactics in pre-collapse war simulations. Brutal, efficient, terrifying. As he spoke, a section of the ship, previously dormant and dark, flickered to life. A low hum resonated through the deck plates, vibrating through their boots. A new holographic projection shimmered into existence, overlaying the battle simulation. This one was different. A galactic map, meticulously detailed, pulsed with ominous red vectors. They originated from the black void beyond known space and converged on vulnerable points across the galaxy. It's predicting, Luna breathed, her voice permeated with awe and horror. The ship. It's analyzing patterns from the ancient war, extrapolating potential future attack vectors. A proactive defense system, centuries ahead of anything we possess. Suddenly, a string of symbols flared on the main display, archaic and angular. Ancient human. Anthony recognized the root structures almost instantly. Wait, I can translate this. He focused, his brow furrowed in concentration. The symbols commitmented themselves into a single chilling sentence. The sleepers awaken. He looked at Luna, his face grim. It's not just a history lesson, Luna. It's a warning, the Voidborn. They weren't destroyed. They're dormant, the ship. It senses their imminent ray emergence. Luna activated her comm, her fingers flying across the control panel. This is Xeno-archaeologist Luna to Central Command. We have new data regarding the... Her voice trailed off as she listened to the response. Her scales darkened slightly, a subtle sign of frustration. With all due respect, Director, this isn't a drill. I understand your skepticism, but the evidence is irrefutable. Yes, I'm aware of the resource allocation priorities. No, I cannot simply shelve this for later analysis. She cut the connection, her teeth gritted. Bureaucratic inertia. They're treating it like a minor anomaly. Unbelievable. A chime sounded on her personal comm, a coded message. Luna frowned, decrypting it with practiced ease. Her eyes widened. This is from Jira, a scientist in the Department of Defense. She read silently, her expression hardening. She's warning me. There's a faction within the government. They want to seize the warship. They see it as a weapon, Anthony, not a warning. She looked at him, her multifaceted eyes filled with a mixture of concern and anger. They don't understand the implications. They only see power. Jira believes they'll try to isolate us, control the ship, and weaponize its technology. Luna hesitated, torn. I should report this, but she trailed off, her gaze meeting Anthony's. I trust you, Anthony, more than I trust some of my own people right now. She took a breath. I'll keep this quiet for now, but we need to be careful. As she spoke, the ship itself seemed to respond. The low hum intensified. The walls shifted subtly. Corridors rearranged themselves, altering the familiar layout. New sections, previously sealed off, became accessible. Anthony ran a hand along the cool, metallic surface of the wall. "It's guiding us, Luna, the ship. It's showing us something, leading us somewhere." They moved forward, following the newly opened path. The corridor twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the warship. Finally, they reached a vast chamber. Inside, bathed in an eerie blue light, stood rows upon rows of stasis pods. Each pod held a perfectly preserved human warrior, clad in ancient battle armor, their faces frozen in expressions of unyielding commitment. Luna approached one of the pods, her eyes wide with disbelief. There, alive, in stasis, for millennia. Anthony examined the control panel on a nearby pod. The pods are programmed to awaken when a specific threat level is reached, when the ship detects a void-borne incursion. These warriors will be reactivated. Luna noticed a small, almost invisible symbol etched into the base of each pod. She scanned it with her wrist-mounted device. A failsafe, a self-destruct mechanism if the ship is compromised. These pods will be destroyed. Her voice was barely a whisper. They were willing to sacrifice them, to prevent the enemy from gaining control. Anthony stared at the rows of sleeping warriors, his mind racing. "We have to awaken them, Luna. They're our only hope. They know how to fight the Voidborn. We need their knowledge, their experience." "But what if they're unstable?" Luna countered, her voice tight with apprehension. "What if they're too far gone? We'd be unleashing potentially volatile individuals into the galaxy." As they debated, a red light began to flash on one of the stasis pods. A klaxon blared, shattering the silence. The liquid within the pod began to churn, and the warrior inside stirred. His eyes snapped open, burning with an inhuman intensity. He slammed against the glass, a guttural roar escaping his lips. His face was contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He didn't look like a soldier, he looked like a monster. Another holographic message flickered to life, overriding the previous displays. This one was different, coded, urgent. Anthony worked feverishly, his fingers flying across the control panel. The translation appeared, stark and terrifying. "Warning, stasis pods contain Berserker UNITs. Awakening sequence initiated. Containment PROTOCOLS engaged. These UNITs are not soldiers. They are weapons of total annihilation. Do not release." The Berserker slammed a fist the size of Anthony's torso into the wall where his head had been a split second before. Dust and groaning metal filled the air. He tasted blood where his cheek had scraped against a jagged edge. This wasn't brute strength, it was something more. The air crackled around the Berserker, a faint blue corona that pulsed with each roar. The ship itself was amplifying its rage, feeding it. Anthony scrambled back, his mind racing. He remembered a passage from Sun Tzu, translated and retranslated across millennia. Exploit your enemy's weakness, strike where they are unprepared. The Berserker was all brute force, no finesse. He needed to use that against it. As the Berserker charged again, Anthony dropped to the floor, sliding between its legs. He grabbed the back of its knee joint, a pressure point he'd learned studying ancient grappling techniques, and pulled. The Berserker stumbled, momentarily off balance. Luna seized the opportunity, raising her stun weapon. "Stand clear." She yelled, firing a concentrated blast at the creature's back. The energy washed over the Berserker, but it barely flinched. It roared, a sound that vibrated in Anthony's bones and backhanded Luna across the room. She crashed into a stasis pod, the impact cracking its surface. "My weapon's ineffective," Luna gasped, clutching her arm. "Its physiology. It's too different from ours. The neural pathways don't respond." Suddenly, a searing beam of energy lanced out from the ceiling, narrowly missing Anthony. It struck the wall behind him, vaporizing a chunk of metal. Another beam followed, then another, each targeting the Berserker with pinpoint accuracy, but tearing apart the chamber in the process. "The ship!" Anthony shouted, dodging another blast. It's not trying to help us. It's just trying to eliminate the threat. Collateral damage be damned. The realization slammed into him. This wasn't a rescue system. It was a kill switch. Luna, recovered slightly, grabbed a heavy-duty engineering tool from her belt, a multi-pronged device used for welding and cutting. She lunged at the berserker, jamming the tool into the creature's exposed spinal column near its neck. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the tool overloaded, sending a surge of energy through the berserker's nervous system. The creature convulsed, its eyes rolling back in its head, and collapsed. "That will only hold it for a few minutes," Luna said, breathing heavily. "We need to decide what to do with the remaining pods." Anthony stared at the deactivated stasis pods. "We can't just destroy them. What if there's a way to reverse this? What if there's something we can learn? And what if they all wake up like that?" Luna countered, gesturing to the downed berserker. "We can't risk it, Anthony. The galaxy can't risk it." Before Anthony could respond, the floor beneath them shuddered. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a new passage leading deeper into the ship. The air within shimmered with an unnatural light. Anthony frowned. "The ship. It's changing the environment again. It's guiding us." "Guiding us where?" Luna asked, her voice infused with suspicion. As if in answer, Luna's wrist console beeped urgently. She glanced at the screen, her expression hardening. "It's a coded message. From my government." She quickly decrypted the message and read it aloud, her voice tight. "Regarding Warship Ragnarok research, a support team is en route to your location to assist in the investigation. You are to cooperate fully with their directives." "Assist?" Anthony raised an eyebrow. "Sounds more like a takeover." Luna nodded grimly. "There's more. Your continued participation in this project is contingent upon a successful transfer of command. Any complications will reflect poorly on your professional record." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My career, it's on the line." She looked at Anthony, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "They don't trust me. They think I'm getting too close to you, to humanity. They want to control the narrative." Anthony placed a hand on her arm. "What are you going to do?" Luna hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, but I know I can't trust them completely." She looked towards the newly opened passage. "Let's see where the ship is trying to take us." They stepped into the passage, which led them into a vast chamber. Row upon row of deactivated robotic drones stood silently, their metallic bodies gleaming in the dim light. They were humanoid in shape, but far larger and more heavily armored than any modern war machine. Ancient human war machines. Anthony walked towards one of the drones, running his hand over its cold, metallic surface. Incredible. These things must be thousands of years old. He noticed a small recess panel on the drone's chest. He pressed it, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a control interface. "This could be it," Anthony said, his voice filled with excitement. "A way to reprogram these drones. To fight the berserkers." Luna approached the interface, studying the alien symbols. "It requires a specific energy signature, something I've never seen before." Anthony's eyes widened. "Wait, I think I know what it is. It matches the energy emitted during the visions." "The rage energy," Luna recoiled. "Are you insane? We can't channel that energy. We don't know what it will do." "We don't have a choice, Luna," Anthony said, his voice urgent. "It's the only way to activate these drones. It's our only chance." As they prepared to activate the interface, a grinding sound echoed through the chamber. The restraints holding the berserker had snapped. It was free, and it was angrier than before. The berserker roared, a sound that triggered a ship-wide alarm. Red lights flashed, and the automatic defenses intensified, energy beams slicing through the air with even greater frequency. Ignoring the chaos, Luna and Anthony worked frantically to activate the drone control interface. Luna initiated the sequence, carefully inputting the energy signature. The interface flickered to life, displaying a complex array of symbols. But before they could fully establish control, the berserker slammed into the console, sending sparks flying. The interface went dead, and alarms blared even louder. Suddenly, the far end of the chamber hissed as a pressure door opened. A squad of heavily armed Saurian soldiers marched in, weapons drawn. Leading them was a familiar figure, Captain Vorak, a high-ranking officer from Luna's past, his expression cold and unforgiving. "Stand down, xeno-archaeologist Luna," Vorak barked, his weapon trained on her. "You are in violation of direct orders. Surrender immediately." "Surrender the interface, Wilson. Stand down, xeno-archaeologist." Vorak's voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by his helmet. His mandibles flared, a clear sign of agitation. "You are interfering with a classified Saurian research operation. Further resistance will be met with lethal force." Anthony ignored him, fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. Sweat beaded on his forehead, illuminated by the flickering light of the overloading interface. "Captain, with all due respect, that research operation just unleashed a berserker drone that's about to tear this ship apart. These drones are humanity's best chance, maybe our only chance to contain it." He didn't look up, his focus absolute. Luna stepped forward, her scales shimmering in the dim light. "Captain Vorak, Ensign Wilson's assessment is accurate. His expertise in ancient Terran technology is invaluable. Perhaps a collaborative approach would yield more effective results." Her tone was measured, diplomatic, but Vorak remained unmoved. "Silence, Luna. Your affinity for this human has clouded your judgment. He is a Terran, and Terrans are not to be trusted. Secure the interface, soldiers." The Saurian soldiers advanced, their plasma rifles raised. Anthony cursed under his breath. "Don't. The system's unstable. For all our sakes, give me a few more minutes." A guttural roar echoed through the chamber, cutting off Anthony's warning. The berserker, its metallic body scarred and sparking, slammed into the remaining Saurian soldiers, scattering them like ragdolls. Plasma fire erupted, but the drone seemed impervious, its movements impossibly fast and brutal. Chaos erupted. Luna flinched as a stray bolt of plasma sizzled past her head. Anthony seized the opportunity, his fingers a blur as he finalized the reprogramming sequence. Almost there. Luna stood frozen, torn between her duty to Vorak and the undeniable truth of Anthony's words. The berserker was a threat to everyone, Saurian and human alike, but Vorak's distrust, his blatant prejudice. It felt wrong. For a heartbeat, she made her choice. She darted forward, inputting a complex code string into the interface, bypassing a Saurian security protocol she recognized from the ship's schematics. "That should give you the access you need, Ensign," she said, her voice barely audible above the din. Then, steeling herself, she returned to Vorak's side, her expression unreadable. The interface shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared. "Reprogramming at 97%. 98, brace yourselves." Anthony shouted, his voice strained. A surge of energy pulsed from the interface, a palpable wave of raw, untamed rage. Suddenly, Anthony was no longer in the cold, metallic chamber. He was standing in a muddy trench, the air thick with the stench of plasma and burning flesh. Before him, bound and kneeling, were a group of things. He couldn't quite make out their features, but he knew they were the enemy. A human commander, his face grim and resolute, stood over them, a plasma pistol in his hand. "Execute them," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "No prisoners." Anthony recoiled, a wave of nausea washing over him. The commander raised his pistol. The flashback vanished as abruptly as it had appeared. Anthony staggered back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The chamber swam back into focus, the berserker's roar a distant echo. What had he just seen? Vorak, his reptilian eyes narrowed, watched Anthony with undisguised contempt. "See, xeno-archaeologist, did you see the truth? The Terran capacity for violence. They are all the same. Savages barely evolved from the beasts they claim to despise." The interface beeped, a single, triumphant tone. "Reprogramming complete," Anthony announced, his voice still shaky. But as he reached out to activate the drones, nothing happened. The holographic displays remained inert, the drones silent and unresponsive. What? Why aren't they responding? Luna stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. The programming sequence. There's a subtle anomaly. It requires a specific command frequency to activate the drones, a frequency not in the standard Terran database. She paused, her eyes widening in realization. It's a frequency used during the Ancient War, a frequency designed to bypass enemy jamming signals. Vorak snarled, his patience finally exhausted. Enough, seize the warship. If they resist, eliminate them. The Saurian soldiers surged forward, their weapons trained on Anthony and Luna. Luna took a deep breath, her scales shimmering with a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. I cannot allow that, Captain. In a movement too fast for the eye to follow, she disarmed Vorak, snatching his plasma pistol from his grasp and tossing it aside. The soldiers froze, their weapons wavering. Luna, what is the meaning of this? Vorak roared, his face contorted with fury. The meaning, Captain, is that you are blinded by your prejudice, Luna said, her voice firm and resolute. Ensign Wilson is right. The Berserker poses a threat to us all, and I believe humanity deserves a chance to prove it has learned from its past. Treason, Vorak spat. You will regret this, Luna. Perhaps, she said, her gaze unwavering. But I will not stand by and watch you condemn an entire species based on the actions of their ancestors. She turned to Anthony. The command frequency is embedded in the warship's core systems, accessible only through a dangerous override procedure. Are you willing to risk it? What are the risks? Anthony asked, his eyes narrowed. The ship's automated defenses will activate, Luna replied, and the core is heavily shielded. The override could trigger a catastrophic system failure. We don't have a choice, Anthony said, his voice grim. Let's do it. Together they raced towards the warship's core, dodging plasma fire from Vorak's remaining soldiers. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, another flashback slammed into Anthony's mind. This time, he saw a human scientist, his face gaunt and determined, standing before a massive, pulsating energy weapon. It's the only way to stop them, he muttered, his voice barely audible. If I overload the core, it'll destroy their main weapon, but it'll also kill me. He activated the overload sequence, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and grit. The image faded. Anthony stumbled, his head reeling. Two starkly different visions of humanity's past. One of brutal execution, the other of selfless sacrifice. Which one was the true face of humanity? They reached the core chamber, a vast, cathedral-like space filled with humming machinery and crackling energy. As they began the override procedure, the ship's automated defenses sprang to life, unleashing a barrage of laser fire. Luna deflected the beams with her energy shield, while Anthony worked feverishly at the control panel. Suddenly, the drones sprang to life. Their weapon systems powered up, targeting the Berserker with deadly precision. Beams of energy lanced through the chamber, striking the Berserker with devastating force. The Berserker roared in pain and frustration, its attacks becoming more erratic and desperate. It's working, Anthony shouted, his voice filled with elation. The drones are online. Vorak, his face a mask of fury, watched as his soldiers were overwhelmed by the activated drones. Traitor, he screamed at Luna. You will pay for this. I will hunt you down, both of you, and make you suffer for your betrayal. He rallied his remaining soldiers, hissing orders. Capture them, alive if possible. I want them to experience the full extent of Saurian justice. The hunt began. Anthony and Luna were on the run, pursued by Vorak and his vengeful soldiers, with the fate of the warship and perhaps the galaxy hanging in the balance. Plasma fire sizzled past Anthony's ear, the acrid smell of burnt metal filling the air. Vorak's guttural roars echoed down the corridor, a counterpoint to the whine of the activated defense drones. Now, Luna shouted, shoving him forward. They sprinted through the warship's labyrinthine corridors, the drones spitting emerald bolts behind them. Each blast was a temporary reprieve, buying them precious seconds against Vorak's relentless pursuit. The drones, though effective, were dwindling in number, their energy signatures fading with each volley. Suddenly, a wave of heat washed over Anthony, followed by the metallic tang of blood. He stumbled, images flashing behind his eyes, towers of shimmering crystal collapsing into dust, the screams of a million voices cut short by a searing white light. A weapon unlike anything he'd ever imagined, vaporizing everything in its path. He gasped, clutching his head. The city, the people, all gone. Anthony, Luna's voice cut through the chaos. Focus, we have to keep moving. He blinked, trying to shake off the vision, the weight of that ancient loss threatening to crush him. I don't know if we deserve to be saved, Luna, he stammered, his voice thick with despair. Look at what we were capable of. Luna grabbed his arm, her scaled hand surprisingly warm. That was then, Anthony. This is now. What we do now, the choices we make, that's what matters. We can't let the past dictate our future. Her gaze was unwavering, filled with a fierce dedication that mirrored his own, however diminished. Behind them, Vorak's voice boomed, closer now. They cannot escape. Seal off sections Gamma 7 through Gamma 12. A metallic screech followed, the sound of bulkheads slamming shut. Luna pointed to a console embedded in the wall. He's using specialized tracking equipment, overriding the ship's internal sensors. She worked furiously, her fingers flying across the controls. He's also alerted other Saurian ships. They'll be here soon. Another explosion rocked the corridor. Anthony stumbled, catching himself against the wall. As he did, his hand brushed against a section of the wall that gave way slightly. He pushed harder, revealing a narrow opening, a hidden access tunnel. This way, he yelled, squeezing through the opening. The tunnel was cramped and dark, the air thick with the musty scent of decay. It felt untouched, forgotten by time. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, filled with technology unlike anything they'd seen before. Consoles shimmered with holographic displays, intricate machinery hummed with latent power. This section of the warship was far more advanced than anything they had encountered thus far. Luna approached a console, her eyes widening. These are records, detailed logs of the rage weapon's effects, not just on the target but on the user as well. Anthony peered over her shoulder, his blood running cold. Images flickered across the screen, human faces twisted in agony, their minds unraveling, their sanity consumed by the weapon's power. Prolonged exposure, Luna read, her voice hushed, leads to irreversible mental degradation. Psychotic breaks, catatonia, complete cognitive collapse. Anthony recoiled, the weight of the past pressing down on him. They sacrificed their sanity to win the war. The moral implications were staggering, the cost of victory horrifying. Luna's fingers danced across the console. Wait, there's more. Data logs, indicating the enemy developed countermeasures, techniques to filter the weapon's psychological effects. Suddenly, a red light flashed, accompanied by a piercing alarm. Vorak's voice echoed through the chamber. There you are. Nowhere left to run, human. Vorak and his remaining soldiers stormed into the chamber, weapons raised. They had them cornered. Just as Vorak's soldiers prepared to fire, a surge of energy erupted from a dormant system within the chamber. The soldiers cried out as their weapons sputtered and died, the room filled with a high-pitched whine. A ripple of energy distorted the air, bending light and sound around them. Then, a holographic projection flickered to life, a distorted image of a being unlike anything they had ever seen. Its features were blurred, its voice raspy and distorted, yet it exuded an aura of immense power. Greetings, the being rasped, its voice echoing in Anthony's mind. I am a survivor. Of the enemy, we have detected your activity. We know of the rage weapon, we believe. An attack is imminent, we seek information to ensure the galaxy's survival. Vorak lowered his weapon, his reptilian eyes wide with disbelief. Luna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The holographic being continued, "The enemy, they are returning and they will not stop. Until all is consumed, we offer assistance in exchange for your cooperation." Anthony stared at the distorted image, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. He looked at Luna, then at Vorak, their faces etched with shock and uncertainty. Could they trust the enemy of their enemy? Or would they all be consumed by the darkness that was about to descend? The choice, he knew, would determine the fate of the stars. The holographic entity shimmered into existence above the war table, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid form composed of swirling, iridescent particles. Its voice, synthesized and devoid of warmth, filled the chamber. "I am Archon. I come with an offer of temporary alliance." Vorak's scaled hand slammed against the table, the metal groaning under the impact. "Alliance with you? After what your kind did? Spare me your lies, Shade. You seek only to manipulate us." His reptilian eyes narrowed, focusing on the holographic figure with undisguised loathing. "What proof do you offer that this threat is even real? And why should we believe anything you say?" Archon's form pulsed slightly, as if considering the question. "The proof lies in the abyss, Saurian. A fragment of our civilization survived, but it has evolved. It has become a parasitic entity, consuming galaxies to sustain itself. Its weakness, surprisingly, is creativity, unpredictability." Luna tapped at her console, her multifaceted eyes scanning the data streams. "Archon's data partially corroborates the existence of a large-scale energy drain in a distant galaxy. However," she paused, her voice filled with caution, "there are inconsistencies. Data points omitted, energy signatures that don't quite align with known parasitic life forms. It is withholding information." Anthony leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Archon. "We operate on verifiable facts here, Archon, not half-truths. We will independently verify your claims, but if what you say is true, we need to prepare. If this entity is as dangerous as you claim, we need to consider all options, however unsavory." He directed his words towards Archon, hoping to appeal to some semblance of logic. Providing more information freely would make a stronger case for your sincerity. Vorak's nostrils flared. "I spit on your options, human, but if this parasite threatens the extinction of my race, a temporary truce is acceptable. Survival comes first, even before the quenching of my ancient hatred." Archon's form flickered again. "Then you will grant me access to the warship's database, specifically information regarding the weapon you call Rage, its deployment strategies, its effectiveness." Anthony recoiled, a phantom echo of the weapon's psychological torment rippling through his mind. "Absolutely not. That weapon. It's too dangerous. It could fall into the wrong hands." The visions of the tormented enemy soldiers flashed before his eyes, a chilling reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty. Luna turned to Anthony, her expression serious. "Understanding the weapon is crucial, Anthony. If this entity is vulnerable to psychological warfare, we need to know how Rage was deployed, its strengths, its weaknesses. With that information, we could devise countermeasures, potentially saving countless lives." Archon offered, "As a sign of good faith, I will provide data on how to isolate the Rage weapon from its effects, turning it into a pure energy source, a weapon of directed force without the psychological fallout." Anthony hesitated, his gut churning. "All right, but I oversee the data transfer. Every line of code, every algorithm. I implement safeguards to prevent you from weaponizing the information." He moved to the central console, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard, initiating the transfer protocols. His technical expertise, honed over years of study, became a shield against Archon's potential treachery. As the data flowed, complex algorithms cascading across the screen, Anthony noticed something amiss. Encrypted files, buried deep within Archon's data stream, their presence masked by layers of obfuscation. His fingers danced across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols, cracking the encryption. A knot formed in his stomach. The decrypted files revealed Archon's true intention. Not to destroy the parasitic entity, but to control it, to harness its power, to bend it to their will, to use it as a weapon of galactic domination. Anthony spun around, his voice a low growl. You lied to us, Archon. You're not trying to destroy the parasite, you're trying to control it. Archon's form remained impassive. Control is the only logical solution, human. Destruction is a waste of resources. By controlling the entity, we can ensure the galaxy's long-term survival. A difficult choice, perhaps, but a necessary one. Vorak erupted, his voice a thunderous roar. Lies, deceit. You would enslave the galaxy to save it. My hatred was justified. The truce is broken. He lunged towards the holographic projector, claws extended, ready to tear Archon apart. Luna stepped between them, her voice sharp. Vorak, stand down. Violence will solve nothing. We need to find a solution that doesn't involve galactic domination. There must be another way. Anthony's mind raced, searching for an alternative. Creativity. Archon said the parasite is vulnerable to creativity. What if we weaponize that? What if we use human ingenuity to create a countermeasure? Archon scoffed, its voice dripping with disdain. Human creativity, chaotic, unpredictable, unreliable, a waste of time. You cling to sentimentality when faced with an existential threat. No, Anthony countered, his voice rising with conviction. It's our greatest strength, our ability to adapt, to innovate, to find solutions where others see only dead ends. We survived this long because we never give up. We bet on human exceptionalism. Anthony gestured wildly, scattering holographic schematics across the already cluttered table. All right, people, let's get weird. We need to hit this parasite with something it's never seen before, something it can't possibly comprehend. Around him, a motley crew of human artists, scientists, and engineers buzzed with nervous energy. Empty nutrient paste packets littered the floor, a testament to their sleepless nights. Luna observed from the periphery, her multifaceted eyes flicking between the humans with cool detachment. Their chaotic energy was inefficient. Yet there was a spark, an unquantifiable element that piqued her scientific curiosity. Vorak's guttural voice cut through the room. With respect, Wilson, this brainstorming seems a frivolous use of resources. The Dominion has weapons forged in the heart of dying stars. What can art possibly achieve? Archon, ever the subtle manipulator, added, indeed. Perhaps we should refocus our efforts on understanding the rage weapon. Its psychological impact is undeniable. A young engineer with grease-stained fingers piped up. What about a sonic weapon based on whale song? Super amplified, of course. Drive 'em crazy with interspecies communication. An artist, her hair a vibrant explosion of color, countered, nah, too predictable. We need memes. Psychological warfare through viral imagery. Imagine parasite propaganda, but like really bad. Anthony chuckled, rubbing his tired eyes. Okay, maybe dial back the internet a notch, but you're on the right track. We need to exploit their cognitive blind spots. He straightened, his gaze sharpening. I'm thinking. Resonance fields, disrupt their communication, their coordination. Jam their signals with pure, unadulterated noise. Luna tilted her head, a flicker of interest in her reptilian eyes. Fascinating. Perhaps Saurian technology could be adapted to amplify and focus these resonance fields. Our sonic resonators are capable of manipulating energy on a sub-quantum level. Archon's gaze intensified, a predatory glint in his eyes. An intriguing synthesis. But wouldn't it be more prudent to incorporate elements of the rage weapon? Its ability to induce psychological collapse could prove invaluable. Anthony bristled. Absolutely not. We're not going down that road, Archon. We're trying to save all of the galaxy, not drive it insane. The initial tests were underwhelming. The resonance fields, instead of disrupting the simulation of the parasitic entity, caused flickering lights and minor system errors throughout the warship. A frustrated technician muttered about blown circuits and overloaded capacitors. Vorak's booming laughter echoed through the observation deck. I trust you are satisfied, Wilson. Your creative approach has achieved nothing but a minor inconvenience. Abandon this folly and embrace the proven power of the rage weapon. Anthony smacked his palm on the console, his squeezing hard. We're not giving up. This is just a setback. We need to refine it, adapt it. We're onto something here, I can feel it. Luna, her expression unreadable, quietly analyzed the data streams. The resonance fields are incomplete, they lack a certain depth. She paused, searching for the right word. Emotional depth. Anthony's eyes widened. Emotional depth. Of course, we've been focusing on the technical aspects, the frequencies, the amplitudes, but we're missing the human element. He turned to the team, his voice rising with excitement. We need to incorporate human emotions into the resonance fields. Hope, perseverance, love. We need to weaponize our souls. The team exchanged nervous glances. The idea was insane, bordering on reckless, but there was a spark of something compelling. In Anthony's eyes, they experimented, channeling raw human emotions through the Saurian technology. The result was a chaotic surge of energy, crackling with unpredictable force. Alarms blared and the air crackled with static. Archon watched with a detached amusement. Emotional energy is a dangerous thing, Wilson. The rage weapon stands as a testament to its destructive potential. Are you certain you wish to proceed down this path? Anthony hesitated for a fraction of a second, then squared his shoulders. We have to try. The potential reward outweighs the risk. His stubbornness, a trait that both infuriated and inspired those around him, was on full display. A second test was conducted, focusing the emotional resonance fields on a small-scale simulation of the parasitic entity. The energy surged, a swirling vortex of light and sound. Then, silence. The simulation flickered, glitched, and collapsed, revealing a hidden vulnerability in the parasite's structure, a nexus point, a delicate web of energy that seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible light. Luna's voice, usually devoid of emotion, held a note of surprise. The parasite is susceptible to complex emotional patterns. The rage weapon with its blunt force trauma was too crude to exploit this weakness. Archon, his reptilian face betraying nothing, simply stated an interesting development. However, I question the scalability of this technique. Can you truly believe that such a delicate approach will be effective on a galactic scale? As the team erupted in cheers, celebrating their breakthrough, a sudden, sharp pain lanced through Anthony's mind. A vision flooded his senses. The parasite adapting, evolving, learning to counter the emotional resonance fields. The enemy was not defeated. It was merely changing. Anthony's breath hitched, the lingering echoes of the vision still vibrating in his skull. Sweat plastered his hair to his forehead. It's adapting, he said, his voice rough. The parasite. It's adapting to our resonance fields, faster than we anticipated. Luna was already at her console, her multifaceted eyes scanning the influx of data. Confirmed, she stated, her voice devoid of inflection but betraying a subtle urgency. The energy signature is shifting, new patterns emerging, it's learning. Archon's scaled face tightened. I warned against this. Experimentation with emotional energy is inherently unstable. The risks are escalating beyond acceptable parameters. A ripple of dissent ran through the Saurian technicians. One, a younger female with iridescent scales, spoke up. But Archon, Dr. Wilson's insights are proving invaluable. We are gaining a far deeper understanding of the parasite's mechanisms through this approach. Understanding at what cost? Archon countered, his gaze sweeping over the assembled crew. This vessel, this entire research endeavor, is jeopardized by these volatile methods. Anthony stepped forward. We need a new strategy. If it's adapting to a consistent pattern, we need to introduce chaos, a feedback loop, something that disrupts its ability to predict and counteract our efforts. Luna's head tilted slightly, a sign of contemplation. I concur. Perhaps a modified Saurian resonance modulator. We could amplify and modulate the emotional fields, creating a more complex and unpredictable pattern. Vorak, his usually placid features etched with concern, interjected. What of the political ramifications? Such a device, amplified emotional resonance. It could be perceived as an act of aggression. Humanity is already viewed with suspicion by some members of the Galactic Council. This could further alienate us. Archon seized the opportunity, his voice smooth as polished obsidian. Indeed, are we certain that granting humanity such power is prudent? Their understanding of these forces is nascent. Perhaps a more controlled approach is warranted. Ignoring Archon's veiled jab, Anthony and Luna huddled over the console, their fingers flying across the holographic displays. We need to balance the raw power of human emotion with the precision of Saurian technology, Anthony muttered, tracing a complex circuit diagram with his finger. Too much chaos, and we risk destabilizing the entire system. Not enough, and the parasite will simply adapt. The refined feedback loop hummed with awe-inspiring energy. As Luna initiated the test sequence, a high-pitched whine filled the chamber. The holographic displays flickered erratically, and a visible distortion shimmered in the air. Energy levels exceeding critical parameters. A technician shouted, his voice tight with panic. Distortion field expanding, containment failing. The distortion field, a swirling vortex of iridescent energy, pulsed ominously, threatening to engulf the entire chamber. Alarms blared and the deck plates vibrated violently. Without hesitation, Anthony lunged towards the central control panel, his hand reaching for the manual override. I can stabilize it. He yelled over the din, ignoring Luna's frantic protests. Just give me a chance. He wrestled with the controls, sweat dripping from his brow as he fought to regain control of the runaway energy. The air crackled with static electricity, and the smell of ozone filled his nostrils. Luna, her multifaceted eyes narrowed in concentration, activated a series of Saurian containment protocols. Energy shields flickered into existence, reinforcing the failing containment field. Hold on, Anthony, she cried, her voice strained. I'm rerouting power from the auxiliary generators. Together, they managed to contain the surge, the distortion field shrinking back to a manageable size. The alarms subsided, and the chamber slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. As the readings stabilized, a new set of data emerged, displayed across Luna's console. Fascinating, she murmured, her gaze fixed on the screen. The feedback loop. It's not just disrupting the parasite's adaptation, it's revealing a new vulnerability, a central node, a point of coordination. Anthony straightened up, his chest heaving. A central node. You mean if we could destroy that, we could cripple the entire parasite network? Potentially, Luna confirmed, but the energy required, it would be immense. Archon stepped forward, his expression unreadable. There is a source of such energy readily available, the rage weapon. It contains a vast amount of concentrated emotional power. A wave of unease washed over Anthony. The rage weapon, but the psychological effects, the potential for widespread trauma. A choice must be made, Archon said, his voice devoid of emotion. Risk the psychological consequences or risk the survival of the galaxy. Luna intervened, her voice firm. There is another option. We could use a small amount of the rage weapon's energy to power the feedback loop. A focused emotional surge precisely targeted at the central node. It could disable the node without causing widespread psychological damage. Anthony hesitated, his mind racing. Even a small dose of that energy, the potential for corruption. I don't know, Luna. Are we sure we can control it? Archon, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward. I will oversee the transfer of energy. My expertise in containment protocols is unparalleled. As the team prepared to implement Luna's plan, a garbled message crackled over the comms system. Static obscured the words, but one phrase cut through the noise, sending a chill down Anthony's spine. Civilization. Fought. Parasite. Before. Luna's fingers danced across the holographic console, her scales catching the faint blue light. Lines of code cascaded down the screen, each one a potential answer, a potential trap. The air in the chamber hummed with the low thrum of Saurian technology, the scent of ozone sharp in her nostrils. Finally, she stopped, her reptilian eyes narrowing. The transmission. It is authentic. Severely degraded but authentic. I've traced its origin, a derelict vessel, in a system designated GR-449, a considerable distance. Anthony approached, his brow furrowed. GR-449. Anything on file? Unremarkable system, Vorak rumbled, his voice echoing in the chamber. Sparse asteroid field, one marginally habitable planet, no established trade routes. Anthony turned to his own console, pulling up historical records. But the message, it mentioned a civilization, the Valres. He typed furiously, holographic images swirling around him, ancient texts, faded star charts, cryptic symbols. They are known for their advanced understanding of psychic warfare. The images shifted, displaying depictions of energy shields shimmering with mental power, warriors wielding psychic blades, landscapes twisted by raw emotion. A silence descended, broken only by the hum of the ship. Archon shifted, his scales rustling. Psychic warfare. Intriguing, but also unreliable. We are facing a threat that consumes entire civilizations. Can we truly rely on whispers from the void? We have little choice, Anthony countered. The rage weapon. It's a last resort. We need to explore every possible alternative. Archon steepled his clawed fingers. Indeed, but consider the risks. Contacting a potentially hostile civilization. A civilization, moreover, that may have already succumbed to the parasite's influence. Are we not simply inviting further danger? Anthony ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Luna had come to recognize as a sign of deep thought. We can't go in blind. I propose a secure communication channel. We use a modified version of the Saurian resonance technology, encrypt the signal, filter out any external psychic interference. Luna nodded, already working on the modifications. It will be delicate work. The Valres's technology is different, but it is possible. As Luna worked, Anthony approached her, his voice low. Luna, the rage weapon, I can't shake this feeling, this fear of what it represents. Luna paused, her multifaceted eyes focusing on him. Fear. Yes, it's a weapon fueled by pure rage, by hate. What happens when we unleash that? What happens to us? He looked away towards the holographic images of Earth, a pale blue sphere hanging in the darkness. Humanity has a history, a dark side. We've fallen before. We've given into the darkness. I fear that weapon. It could corrupt us. Luna tilted her head, a gesture that conveyed curiosity rather than judgment. The Valres. They understand emotional energy. They see it as a force to be controlled, disciplined. They believe that emotions, even negative ones, can be harnessed for good. Unseen by either of them, Archon, ostensibly monitoring their progress, subtly adjusted the parameters of the communication channel. A barely perceptible energy distortion rippled through the system, a whisper of chaos woven into the fabric of the signal. The moment arrived. Luna initiated the communication sequence. The chamber filled with a low, resonant hum, the air crackling with energy. Then a voice, fragmented and distorted, echoed through the ship. Civilization, fought, parasite, before, warning. Psychic, manipulation. Can you clarify? Anthony urged, his voice tight with anticipation. Parasite, not single, entity, collective, consciousness, feeds, emotional, energy. Luna translated swiftly. They are saying the parasite is not a single being but a collective, a consciousness that thrives on emotional energy. The voice continued, weaker now. Rage, weapon, amplify, connection, strengthen, parasite. They're warning us, Anthony said, his voice grim. Using the rage weapon, even a small dose, it could make things worse. Alternative, disrupt, psychic, network, artifact, warship. The transmission abruptly cut off, leaving only static and the heavy silence of the chamber. An artifact? Anthony questioned, turning to Luna. What kind of artifact? Archon stepped forward, his voice sharp. This is foolish. We are trusting whispers from a dead civilization. They are clearly attempting to manipulate us. Vorak nodded, his heavy brow furrowed. The Valres. We know nothing of them, the artifact. It could be anything too dangerous. Anthony clenched his fists. But what choice do we have? The rage weapon is a gamble. This is a chance to avoid unleashing that darkness. A chance to walk into a trap, Archon countered. We must focus on what we know. The rage weapon is a tool, we control it, we use it responsibly. Responsibly? Anthony scoffed. How can you use a weapon of pure rage responsibly? The tension in the chamber was palpable, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Vorak spoke, his voice weary. We will search for the artifact, but Archon will lead the expedition. His knowledge of Saurian technology will be essential. Archon inclined his head, a subtle smile playing on his lips. As you wish. As he turned to prepare, he subtly activated a hidden comm channel on his wrist device, transmitting a coded message into the void. The hunt begins. The prey is unaware. Luna, her eyes still fixed on the communication console, frowned. Anthony, I detected a slight energy distortion during the transmission. A fluctuation in the resonance frequency. Archon. Anthony asked, his voice low. Luna hesitated. I cannot be certain, but it warrants further investigation. Anthony stared at Archon's retreating back, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. He was placing his trust humanity's fate in the hands of someone he deeply suspected. But the alternative was to unleash the rage. He had to take the chance. The smaller vessel shuddered as it detached from the Archon's hope, the magnetic clamps releasing with a metallic groan that vibrated through Anthony's teeth. The interior, cramped and utilitarian, smelled of recycled air and ozone. Archon, strapped into the pilot's seat, adjusted the navigation controls with an unsettlingly confident grin. Luna sat behind him, her reptilian eyes narrowed, focused on the holographic display showing Archon's outgoing communications. Lines of encrypted text scrolled across the screen, indecipherable. A faint hiss escaped her vocal sac as she subtly adjusted the gain on her monitoring equipment. Frustration tightened her jaw. She couldn't break through. Across from her, Anthony hunched over a similar screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. The Valres information was a jumbled mess of archaic symbols and cryptic references, but he was starting to piece it together. Psychic dampener, he muttered, tracing a symbol with his finger. They believed it could suppress or control psychic abilities. The implication sent a chill down his spine. What if this was more than just a defensive tool? A sudden flicker of the overhead lights interrupted his thoughts. Then a low, guttural hum filled the vessel. Minor power fluctuation, Archon announced, his voice a touch too casual. Nothing to worry about. Luna's eyes darted to the energy conduits running along the wall. She noticed a faint scorch mark near one of the access panels, a detail that shouldn't be there. The ship lurched violently as they approached the ancient warship. The sensors painted a grim picture. A gaping hole in the warship's hull, twisted metal reaching out like skeletal fingers, and radiation leaks venting into space. Section 7 heavily damaged, Archon reported, his voice betraying a hint of excitement. Hull integrity is compromised, we'll need to reroute. He plotted a course on the navigation console. Luna leaned forward, her scales prickling with unease. That route takes us directly through the most unstable section, she pointed out, her voice carefully neutral. Archon chuckled. Precisely. It's the quickest and safest path. Trust me, xeno-archaeologist Luna, I know this vessel better than anyone. As they penetrated the warship's interior, the air grew thick with the metallic tang of decay. Automated defense systems, dormant for millennia, flickered back to life. A laser turret swiveled, targeting their vessel with a menacing red beam. Evasive maneuvers. Archon barked, expertly piloting the ship through a maze of corridors. Laser fire ripped through the air, narrowly missing their hull. Anthony, bracing himself against the wall, shouted, "There, the energy conduits. If we can overload them, we might disable the turret." Luna, her movements precise and efficient, accessed the ship's schematics. He's right. But the access panel is heavily shielded. I know a way, Anthony said, a glint of dedication in his eyes. He pulled out a small device from his pack, a relic analyzer he'd modified. The ancient humans used a specific frequency to bypass these security measures. He worked quickly, rerouting the analyzer's signal. The panel hissed open. Luna connected her data cable, and within seconds the turret sputtered and died. They pressed on, deeper into the warship's heart. They found a hidden chamber, its walls lined with holographic projectors. Ghostly images flickered to life, ancient humans, clad in strange armor, undergoing intense psychic training. Their faces were contorted in concentration, sweat pouring down their brows. "They're channeling something," Anthony whispered, his voice filled with awe and horror. Luna studied the displays. The rage energy. They're trying to control it, to weaponize it. The images shifted, showing the humans struggling, their bodies racked with pain. Some screamed, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Luna noticed something out of place. A small access panel near the chamber entrance had been forced open, the locking mechanism bypassed with a crude tool. She recognized the tool. It belonged to one of Archon's loyalists. Her scales tightened. "We're here," Archon announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. He led them to a large, circular room, bathed in an eerie blue glow. In the center, resting on a pedestal, was the artifact, a crystalline device, humming with barely suppressed energy. As Anthony approached the artifact, a section of the wall slid open with a grinding noise. A creature emerged from the darkness, a parasitic monstrosity, all glistening chitin and razor-sharp claws. It screeched, drawn to the artifact's energy. Archon stepped aside, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "Behold," he announced, his voice dripping with fanaticism. "The next stage in Saurian evolution. The rage weapon will accelerate the process, transforming us into gods." Laser fire erupted. Archon and his loyalists opened fire on Anthony and Luna's team. The parasitic creature, caught in the crossfire, lashed out blindly, tearing through the chamber. Luna, dodging a blast of energy, severed Archon's communication link with a precise shot. "Anthony, get away from it," she screamed, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "It's a trap." Anthony, caught between the firefight and the parasitic creature, hesitated. He saw the creature, its eyes burning with hunger, drawn to the artifact's energy. He made a daring decision. He lunged forward, grabbing the crystalline device. The moment he touched it, a surge of energy coursed through his body. The parasitic creature recoiled, screeching in pain, but the artifact's power was unstable. A chain reaction began, spreading through the damaged section of the warship. The entire vessel shuddered. "Anthony, no," Luna yelled, scrambling towards him. "Get away from it, the ship is going to explode." Anthony, his face pale but resolute, clutched the artifact tightly. "We need this," he gasped. "The Valres need this. Or we need it to stop the psychic enemy. We have to try." As the team attempted to retreat, the warship lurched violently. A section of the ceiling collapsed, sending debris crashing down. A wall slammed shut, separating Anthony and Luna from Archon and the others. They were trapped. The metal shrieked, a tortured groan that vibrated through Anthony's bones. The section was collapsing inward, bulkheads groaning under immense pressure. Debris, a twisted tapestry of metal and sparking wires, sealed off the corridor ahead. "Damn it!" He slammed a fist against a buckled panel, sending a shower of rust flakes raining down. Luna's multifaceted eyes scanned their surroundings, taking in the failing structural supports. We must find a way through, quickly. She moved with purpose, her chitinous fingers tracing the contours of a fallen console. They scavenged, desperation fueling their search. Anthony kicked aside a mangled service bot, its single optical sensor flickering erratically. He spotted it, then a heavy-duty tool, half buried beneath a pile of twisted girders. Ancient human make, a fusion cutter judging by the worn label. The power cell was cracked, but a flicker of green light promised a spark of life. He wrestled it free. Might be enough juice for one shot, he grunted, hefting the weight. Before he could activate it, a skittering sound echoed from the shadows. A parasitic creature, its segmented body glistening with viscous fluid, lunged from the darkness. Its mandibles snapped, narrowly missing Luna's leg. Behind you, Anthony roared, swinging the fusion cutter. A blast of emerald energy lanced out, severing the creature's head. The body convulsed, then went still. But the cutter emitted a high-pitched whine, a frequency that drilled into their skulls. Luna winced, clutching her head. That sound. It is attracting more. A chorus of skittering erupted from the surrounding shadows. Time to move, Anthony said grimly. He reactivated the cutter, its emerald glow casting eerie shadows. Deeper into the ship. It's our only chance. They pressed forward, the fusion cutter spitting sparks as it sliced through the debris. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of decay and the ozone stench of failing power conduits. They stumbled into a vast chamber, its walls lined with holographic projectors. Most were shattered, but one flickered with ghostly images. Ancient human figures, clad in military uniforms, marched in formation. They chanted in unison, their voices echoing with fervor. The images shifted, showing brutal combat scenarios, psychological evaluations, and simulated torture. The holographic chamber was a training ground, a conditioning center for soldiers steeped in rage. Luna watched, her expression unreadable. They were training themselves to hate. Anthony nodded grimly. The rage energy wasn't just a weapon, Luna, it was a state of mind, a carefully cultivated psychosis. He pointed to a figure on the screen, a young woman with haunted eyes. Look at her, see the strain, the internal conflict. They were weaponizing their own minds, and it was tearing them apart. Luna's head tilted slightly, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the flickering light. I am beginning to understand the complexities of human emotions, the capacity for both great good and terrible evil. Your species is a paradox. They moved on, finding a hidden escape pod bay. The pods were charred and twisted, victims of some ancient explosion. Hope dwindled, replaced by a cold dread. Only one pod remained relatively intact, but its power couplings were severed, wires sparking uselessly. Anthony knelt beside it, his fingers tracing the damaged circuitry. I might be able to reroute the power, he muttered. Hours passed, marked only by the hum of the fusion cutter and the rhythmic clang of metal against metal. Finally, with a sigh of exhaustion, Anthony straightened up. I've done what I can, but it's only enough power for one person. A short jump may be enough to send a distress signal. Luna stepped forward. Then you must take it, Anthony. Your knowledge of this warship, of its technology. It is crucial. I will continue to search for another way out. Anthony shook his head. I'm not leaving you behind, Luna. We'll figure something out together. They found it in a separate, smaller chamber, a control console, its surface scarred and blackened. Symbols glowed faintly beneath a layer of grime. This looks like weapon systems control, Anthony said, running his hand over the console. Maybe I can disable the rage weapon. He tapped a sequence of commands, but the system remained unresponsive, encrypted, and heavily damaged. Luna approached, her delicate manipulators extending towards the console. Her fingers danced across the surface, inputting complex algorithms. I believe I can bypass the security protocols, she murmured. A moment later, the console flickered to life. but instead of weapon controls, a diagnostic program initiated. A wall of text cascaded across the screen, followed by a single stark message. Destroy this ship. The rage will corrupt you. The message hung in the air, heavy with dread. Before they could process it, a voice shattered the silence. Impressive. I didn't think you'd get this far. Archon stepped into the chamber, flanked by two heavily armed Saurians. His eyes gleamed with malevolent satisfaction. But your curiosity has led you to your doom. Anthony tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for the fusion cutter. Archon, what do you want? What I have always wanted, Archon sneered. To cleanse the galaxy of weakness, and this abomination will be my instrument. The rage will burn away the impurities, starting with your pathetic species. You're insane, Anthony spat. Archon chuckled. Perhaps, but I am also determined, and now your meddling ends. The ship groaned again, another section collapsing nearby. The situation was desperate. Anthony, outnumbered and outgunned, knew they couldn't win a straight fight. He had to create an opening. With a surge of adrenaline, he activated the repaired escape pod. The small craft lurched to life, its engines whining. He programmed a collision course, targeting Archon directly. What the? Archon roared, caught off guard. Anthony slammed the launch button. The escape pod shot forward, a desperate missile aimed at their oppressor. The pod slammed into Archon, knocking him off his feet and rupturing his armor. The distraction gave Anthony and Luna their chance. Now, Luna. They bolted, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the dying warship, leaving Archon to deal with the chaos. His team rushed to his side, but the damage was done. Anthony and Luna had vanished into the shadows. The service tunnels were a labyrinth of pipes and conduits, barely wide enough for a Saurian, let alone a human. Anthony pushed forward, Luna close behind, the echo of Archon's pursuit team bouncing off the metal walls. His breath hitched in his chest, the stale air thick with the metallic tang of coolant. This way, Luna hissed, her bioluminescent scales casting an eerie glow. A clang echoed from behind. They were gaining. Rounding a corner, Luna stopped dead. Ammunition cache, she breathed, pointing to a reinforced door with a faded human insignia. Ancient weapons. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber filled with racks of unfamiliar weaponry. Energy rifles, their stocks crafted from a dark, polished material, rested beside bulky protective suits that looked centuries out of date. Anthony reached out, his fingers tracing the contours of a rifle. It felt surprisingly balanced, the weight reassuring. Can you use them? Luna asked, her voice tight with urgency. Anthony shouldered the rifle, sighting down its unfamiliar barrel. Give me a minute, he muttered, adjusting the settings. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting targeting data onto his retina. Yeah, he said grimly. I think I can make this work. Luna grabbed a smaller rifle and a suit of armor, the plates shifting and adjusting to her form with a low hum. They barely had time to check their weapons before the sounds of approaching footsteps echoed down the tunnel. Here they come, Anthony said, leveling his rifle. The chamber doors burst open, and a squad of heavily armed Saurian soldiers poured in, led by one of Archon's lieutenants. Their scales were a uniform gray, their eyes cold and devoid of emotion. Anthony's stomach clenched. These weren't just guards, they were loyalists. Archon's influence ran deeper than he'd imagined. Hold, the lieutenant barked, raising his weapon. Secure Wilson and the traitor. Energy bolts streaked across the chamber, slamming into the walls and sending sparks flying. Anthony and Luna dove for cover behind a stack of crates, returning fire. The ancient rifles roared, unleashing blasts of raw energy that tore through the Saurian armor like paper. Luna watched in grim fascination as one of Archon's soldiers calmly executed a wounded comrade to prevent him from slowing the squad down. Her scales rippled with a mixture of horror and disgust. This wasn't order, it was cold-blooded efficiency. A stray shot hit a control panel, sending a cascade of sparks down the wall. Alarms blared and the lights flickered violently. Critical system damage, a computerized voice announced. Initiating ship-wide lockdown, sector integrity compromised. Heavy blast doors slammed shut throughout the ship, sealing off sections with a deafening thud. Anthony and Luna exchanged a panicked glance. Their escape route was closing. "We have to move," Anthony yelled, firing a blind volley to cover their retreat. They scrambled towards a maintenance hatch as the chamber doors began to seal shut. Anthony squeezed through just as the gap narrowed to a sliver, the heavy metal scraping against his armor. Luna wasn't so lucky. The door slammed shut, separating them with a sickening clang. "Luna," Anthony shouted, pounding on the door. "Go," she yelled back, her voice muffled by the thick metal. "Get out of here, I'll find you." Despair threatened to engulf him, but he knew Luna was right. He had to keep moving. He turned and plunged into the darkness, his rifle raised. He found himself in a vast chamber filled with holographic projectors. Images flickered to life around him, depicting scenes of the ancient human-alien war. Battles raged across alien landscapes, ships clashed in the void, and cities burned under a crimson sky. The air crackled with the energy of simulated weapons fire. The ground trembled with the phantom weight of marching armies. He watched as human soldiers, their faces grim and determined, unleashed devastating weapons on their enemies. He saw cities leveled, planets scorched, and entire species driven to extinction. The simulations were brutal, unflinching in their depiction of the horrors of war. He saw the ancient humans use tactics that chilled him to the bone: biological weapons, psychological warfare, and acts of unspeakable cruelty. Meanwhile, Luna was dragged before Archon, her arms bound tightly behind her. He stood in his command center, surrounded by his loyal soldiers, his eyes burning with zeal. "Join me, Luna," Archon said, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Help me bring order to this chaotic galaxy. The rage weapon is the key. It will eliminate the violent tendencies that plague our species." "The rage weapon is a tool of terror," Luna retorted, her voice defiant. "It will only create more suffering." Archon shook his head sadly. "You don't understand, Luna. Sometimes the only way to achieve peace is through overwhelming force. The galaxy must be purged of those who would threaten its stability." He gestured to a holding cell where a group of parasites huddled in terror. "I will show you. I will demonstrate the weapon's power, and you will see the truth." Anthony, his knees going weak from the holographic horrors he had witnessed, suddenly understood how to override the lockdown. He tapped a series of commands into a nearby console, his fingers flying across the ancient interface. The blast doors hissed open, revealing a pathway to Archon's command center. He burst into the room just as Archon was about to activate the rage weapon. The parasites cowered in fear, their bodies trembling. Luna's eyes widened in horror. "Archon!" Anthony roared, leveling his rifle. "Stop!" Archon turned, his face a mask of fury. "You dare interfere!" He lunged at Anthony, knocking the rifle from his hands. The two men grappled, their bodies slamming against the metal floor. The fight was brutal and desperate. Archon, larger and stronger, had the initial advantage, but Anthony fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He dodged, weaved, and struck with every ounce of strength he possessed. Luna, seeing her chance, kicked out at one of the guards, sending him sprawling. She scrambled to her feet and began to free the parasites. She realized then that Archon saw all life as a means to an end. Archon slammed Anthony against a wall, his hand closing around his throat. Anthony gasped for air, his vision blurring. Just as Archon was about to deliver the final blow, Luna saw an opening. She knew Saurian anatomy intimately. She spotted a chink in Archon's armor, a vulnerable spot near his spinal column. With a swift, precise strike, she slammed her fist into the weak point. Archon cried out in pain, his grip loosening. Anthony seized the opportunity, grabbing a discarded energy rifle and blasting Archon's weapon out of his hand, but it was too late. Archon, enraged and defeated, plunged into the reactor core, vanishing into the swirling vortex of energy. The room shuddered violently. Alarms blared. Reactor core destabilizing. The computerized voice shrieked. Containment breach imminent. Initiate emergency shutdown. Anthony stared in horror at the reactor core, its energy levels spiking dangerously. The ship was about to tear itself apart, and with it, unleash the rage weapon upon the galaxy. There was no way to escape and stop it. The reactor throbbed, a monstrous heart struggling against its failing cage. Red emergency lights strobed across the grimy metal of the chamber, painting grotesque shadows that danced with the hissing steam erupting from cracked pipes. Alarms blared, a cacophony of klaxons and distorted voices warning of imminent catastrophe. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of superheated coolant. Anthony wiped sweat from his brow, his jumpsuit clinging to his skin. The readings are spiking, Luna. We're minutes away from a breach. Luna, her reptilian eyes narrowed in concentration, tapped furiously at her wrist-mounted console. Archon's interference has destabilized the containment field generators. He rerouted power, creating cascading failures throughout the system. A holographic display flickered to life, showcasing a simulation of the potential meltdown. The reactor core flared, then erupted in a wave of energy that washed over the warship. But the simulation didn't stop there. The energy wave expanded, engulfing nearby planets, their surfaces twisting and distorting in a wash of psychic torment. That's the rage weapon, Anthony breathed, horror choking his voice. A reactor breach will amplify its effects. We're not just talking about destroying the ship, Luna, we're talking about galactic-scale psychological warfare. Luna's scales shimmered with a faint blue light, a sign of her own mounting anxiety. There are emergency protocols designed to contain a reactor breach. Ancient protocols. Their effectiveness is questionable. We don't have a choice, Anthony said, grabbing his pulse rifle. Let's find the central control room. The corridors of the warship were a labyrinth of decaying metal and sparking wires. They moved quickly, the only sounds their echoing footsteps and the insistent wail of the alarms. Rounding a corner, they encountered a squad of Saurian soldiers, their eyes glazed over, weapons trained on them. Traitors! One of the soldiers hissed, his voice distorted by static. For Archon. A brief, brutal skirmish erupted. Anthony, surprisingly agile, used the corridor's cramped confines to his advantage, firing short, controlled bursts from his rifle. Luna, with her superior strength and reflexes, disarmed one soldier with a swift kick, then used his own weapon against the others. Their movements were fluid, coordinated, a testament to their growing understanding and trust. Within seconds, the soldiers lay unconscious on the deck. "Control room's just ahead," Luna said, her chest heaving. "But the system, it's corrupted." The central control room was a scene of chaotic disarray. Consoles sparked and smoked, wires dangled from the ceiling, and the air crackled with residual energy. The main display screen was a fractured mess of static and corrupted data. "The emergency protocols," Luna said, her voice tight with frustration. "They're locked. The system requires a manual override, but the access codes, they're gone." Anthony ran his hand across a corroded console, his fingers tracing the ancient symbols etched into the metal. "Wait, this design. It's similar to ancient human fusion reactors. I remember seeing schematics back in the archives." Luna accessed the ship's schematics on her console, feeding them to Anthony. "Compare, analyze, quickly." Working in tandem, their combined knowledge bridging the gulf between species and millennia, they deciphered the system's archaic language. Anthony's understanding of human engineering principles, coupled with Luna's technical expertise, proved to be the key. "There," Anthony exclaimed, pointing to a series of interlocking symbols. "That's the sequence, but there's something else here. A hidden message." Luna rerouted power to a small, isolated terminal. A holographic image flickered to life, revealing the stern face of a human woman in a military uniform. Her voice, though distorted by time and static, was clear and resolute. "If you are seeing this, then the situation is dire. The Archon have proven to be more resilient than we anticipated. They are masters of subversion, of psychological manipulation. They turn our fears against us, planting seeds of doubt and despair. This weapon, the rage weapon, it is our last resort. It is designed to instill so much fear, so much terror that they will break, they will splinter, they will retreat rather than face us." The image flickered and died, leaving Anthony and Luna in stunned silence. Anthony ran a hand through his hair, his face etched with conflict. A weapon of mass psychological destruction. Was it justified, even in the face of genocide? "Justification is a human construct," Luna said, her voice neutral. "Survival is a biological imperative." Anthony shook his head, wrestling with the moral implications. But at what cost? What does it say about us if we resort to such barbarity? He pushed his doubts aside, focusing on the task at hand, the override sequence. "I've got it." With trembling fingers, he entered the code into the console. The room shuddered as the emergency protocols initiated. Containment fields flickered to life around the reactor core, shimmering barriers of energy that pulsed with an unnatural light. "It's working," Luna exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. "The reactor's destabilization rate is slowing." But their relief was short-lived. Alarms continued to blare and the containment fields flickered erratically. The fields. "They're not holding," Anthony said, his brow furrowed. "They're being disrupted. Look at the energy readings." Luna consulted her console. "There's a faint energy signature emanating from deep within the reactor core. It's interfering with the containment field generators." "Archon," Anthony said, his voice grim. "He's still alive. He's sabotaging the containment efforts from inside the reactor." The reactor core was a maelstrom of radiation and unstable energy, a place where death was a certainty. "We have to go in," Anthony said, his voice barely a whisper. "We have to stop him." "Madness," Luna stated flatly, but her eyes held a glint of something akin to respect. As they prepared to enter the core, the comm system crackled to life. A garbled transmission, fragmented and distorted, filled the room. "Nar, Zek, humanity, SLA." Anthony's eyes widened. He recognized the linguistic structure. It was faint, almost unrecognizable after millennia, but he knew it. That language, it's the Archon's ancient enemy. The ones the rage weapon was used against. Luna's scales rippled with alarm. Impossible, they were believed to be extinct. "They're not," Anthony said, his voice filled with dread. "The warship's activation. It's awakened them. They're coming back." He looked at the unstable reactor core, then back at Luna. Stabilizing the reactor was no longer just about preventing immediate destruction. It was about preparing for the ray emergence of a powerful and ruthless enemy, an enemy humanity had faced once before, and nearly been destroyed by. "We have to do this," Anthony said, his voice resolute. "For the galaxy, for humanity." He activated his environmental suit, the helmet sealing with a hiss. Luna mirrored his actions, her reptilian eyes fixed on his. "Then let us descend," she said, her voice devoid of fear, "and face whatever awaits us." They stepped towards the reactor core, ready to confront Archon and the potential return of an ancient and terrifying enemy. The heat slammed into them like a physical blow, radiation prickling against their skin, even through the protective suits. The reactor core wasn't a chamber. It was a nightmare given form. Twisted metal latticework, once part of the ship's structure, writhed like tortured limbs around pulsating conduits of raw energy. Blinding flashes of light erupted without warning, momentarily searing their vision. The air tasted of ozone and something acrid, something akin to burning bone. The rage wasn't just an energy signature. It was palpable here, a chaotic symphony of destruction echoing in the very architecture of the core. Swirling vortexes of emerald and crimson light danced around them, each pulse a silent scream. Then they saw it, a crude platform cobbled together from salvaged panels and jury-rigged wiring, bathed in the sickly green glow of hijacked conduits. A single figure stood hunched over the makeshift console, his scaled back shimmering with reflected heat. Archon. He'd created a control center within the heart of the storm, amplifying the reactor's instability with every passing moment. He turned, his reptilian eyes burning with fanaticism. "So the pets have arrived to clean up after their masters," he hissed, his voice distorted by the reactor's hum. "I commend your persistence, but it is futile. Soon this weapon will unleash its fury upon those who deserve it most, humanity and those pathetic races that grovel at their feet." Luna stepped forward, her expression hardening. "Archon, stop this. You're destroying everything." "Destroying?" Archon laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "I am correcting, cleansing. Humanity brought this upon themselves, and now they will pay the ultimate price." He gestured to a series of modifications he was making to the reactor's central conduit. "I am merely refining the delivery system, ensuring the message reaches its intended recipients." Luna's eyes widened, her gaze darting to the console. "You're not just sabotaging the reactor, you're modifying the rage weapon." "Indeed," Archon confirmed, a cruel smile twisting his features. "No more indiscriminate waves of despair. I'm focusing it, turning it into a surgical tool. Imagine, Counselor." A perfectly aimed dose of terror, delivered directly to the heart of the Galactic Council. The battle was immediate. Archon pounded his fist on the console, triggering a cascade of energy surges. The reactor core bucked and groaned, throwing them both off balance. Jagged shards of metal ripped from the walls, propelled by bursts of superheated steam. He knew the ship systems intimately, turning the environment itself into a weapon. A memory flashed through Archon's mind, a flicker of the past bleeding into the present. A younger Archon standing on a desolate, war-torn world, the sky choked with ash. His family, gone, vaporized in an instant by a weapon he couldn't comprehend. The rage of that moment, the utter devastation, echoed in his eyes. Another surge knocked Luna back against a wall, her suit hissing as it absorbed the impact. Anthony scrambled for cover behind a mangled support beam, trying to anticipate Archon's next move. He noticed something, a pattern in the chaotic energy flows, a subtle rhythm beneath the surface. Then it hit him. It wasn't random. Archon was manipulating the reactor's energy signature to mimic the attack patterns of the ancient enemy. The enemy wasn't simply about brute force. They were masters of psychological warfare. They studied their opponents, identified their fears, and weaponized them. He remembered reading about it in the ancient texts, the enemy's ability to induce mass hysteria, to turn entire populations against each other with carefully crafted illusions and whispered lies. They didn't just want to conquer, they wanted to break their enemies, to shatter their spirits. Luna, recovering, fired a pulse of electromagnetic energy at the console, disrupting Archon's control. The reactor sputtered, its energy flows momentarily destabilizing. It was a small window, but it was enough. Anthony lunged forward, dodging blasts of superheated plasma. He closed the distance between them, his eyes locked on Archon's. "This isn't you, Archon," he shouted, his voice barely audible above the reactor's roar. "You're a Saurian, a warrior. You have a sense of honor. Don't let this hate consume you." Archon paused, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. For a moment, Anthony thought he'd gotten through, but then Archon's eyes hardened again, his gaze shifting to Luna. "Honor?" he spat. "There is no honor, only betrayal. She stands with them, with the humans. She has chosen her side." He raised a hand, activating another sequence on the console. "I do this for my people, for those who cannot." He lunged at Anthony, a vibroblade flashing in his hand. Anthony parried the blow, the force of the impact sending tremors up his arm. They grappled, trading blows in the heart of the raging reactor. Another energy surge erupted, bathing the core in an eerie green light. Suddenly, the platform beneath their feet shimmered, and the twisted metal of the reactor core dissolved into a pristine, sterile environment. They were no longer in the core, but on the bridge of an ancient warship. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing tactical schematics and sensor readings. Before them unfolded a recreation of an ancient battle, swarms of alien fighters darting through the void, capital ships exchanging volleys of devastating fire. Anthony saw it then, the pattern he'd glimpsed in the reactor's energy flows. The enemy ships weren't attacking randomly. They were targeting specific points on the human vessels, exploiting vulnerabilities in their shields and armor. But more than that, they were targeting the crew's morale. Waves of disinformation projected hallucinations, psychological warfare on a grand scale. He saw the enemy's strategy: isolate, demoralize, then destroy. Luna, meanwhile, fought desperately to regain control of the reactor's core functions. With a final surge of effort, she managed to override Archon's modifications, redirecting the energy flows back into their containment fields. Taking advantage of the distraction, Anthony disarmed Archon with a sharp kick, sending the vibroblade clattering across the holographic bridge. Archon collapsed to his knees, defeated. With Archon subdued, they turned their attention back to the reactor. Using the knowledge gleaned from Archon's modifications and the holographic simulation, they worked together to fine-tune the containment fields, slowly bringing the reactor back under control. The chaotic energy flows began to subside, the oppressive heat diminishing. As the reactor stabilized, the garbled transmission they'd been receiving from the depths of space became clearer, resolving into a string of numbers, galactic coordinates. Then, a surge of energy unlike anything they'd felt before pulsed from the reactor core. It wasn't destructive, but connecting. A jolt went through Anthony, and for a fleeting moment his mind opened and he saw it all. The war, the sacrifices, the sheer, unyielding will of the ancient humans. He felt their rage, their sorrow, their unwavering drive to protect their own. The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Anthony gasped, stumbling back, his pupils dilating. He knew now, he understood the coordinates. They weren't a distress signal, they were a staging point, the enemy. They were far closer than anyone had imagined. Luna's scaled fingers danced across the console, pulling up spectral analysis of the transmission source. System designation, LX-922, located on the galactic fringe, bordering the Perseus void. Minimal resources, negligible strategic importance. Classified as low priority for resource allocation. The words were delivered with clinical precision, yet a flicker of something akin to anticipation crossed her reptilian eyes. Anthony closed his own eyes, focusing. The bridge hum faded, replaced by a low, guttural thrumming in his mind, like a distant engine of despair. A cold dread seeped into his bones, a sense of crushing oppression that had nothing to do with physical force. That system, it's a wound, he said, his voice barely a whisper. A psychic wound, something awful is there. So we charge in, guns blazing. Kalen demanded, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. Or do we actually use our brains for once? An immediate assault would be ill-advised, Luna countered, her gaze fixed on the holographic star chart. We possess insufficient intelligence regarding the enemy's capabilities in that region. A sharp, insistent beeping cut through the tense atmosphere. Incoming distress signal, Lieutenant Reyes announced, her brow furrowed. Origin, a small research station within the LX-922 system. They're reporting strange sensor anomalies, erratic energy fluctuations, and increasingly vivid nightmares among the crew. Her voice faltered on the last word. Luna tapped a claw against the console. The research station. It specializes in long-range sensor calibration. Their data could prove invaluable. She looked at Anthony, a subtle plea in her eyes. A reconnaissance mission, perhaps. Investigate the distress signal, gather intelligence, then reassess our strategy. Anthony hesitated. The oppressive feeling radiating from the system was intensifying, a siren song of despair. A trap, almost certainly, but the thought of those researchers trapped and tormented. "All right," he conceded, his voice heavy. "But we proceed with extreme caution. This feels wrong." Every instinct I have is screaming at me to turn back. As the ship altered course, Rays reported, detecting faint energy signatures near the research station. Unidentifiable, but they resonate with the transmission's frequency, almost like an echo. The research station hung in the blackness, a cluster of interconnected modules that looked disturbingly normal. Yet as they approached, a subtle unease settled over the crew. The stars seemed to flicker at the edges of their vision. The hum of the ship's engines felt off-key. "Station appears abandoned," Rays reported, her voice tight. "Life support is minimal, no signs of recent activity, but..." She paused, her fingers flying across the console. "There are signs of a hasty evacuation. Personal belongings left behind, emergency protocols bypassed." Anthony felt it then, a subtle distortion in the fabric of reality. The air seemed to shimmer, the shadows to writhe. He could almost hear whispers, too faint to decipher, yet filled with malice. "Something's wrong here," he murmured, his hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of his sword. "Very wrong." "I'll accompany you," Luna stated, already moving towards the embarkation bay. "My expertise in xeno-environmental analysis may prove useful." The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Flickering emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock their every step. A low, guttural hum permeated the station, a sound that vibrated in their bones and set their teeth on edge. "Audio distortion detected," Luna announced, her multi-lensed eyes scanning the environment. "Localized pockets of interference," and she paused, her head tilted slightly. "Visual anomalies, minor refractive distortions, almost imperceptible." They moved deeper into the station, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The air grew colder, heavier, thick with a sense of unseen menace. Then they found the logs. Splayed across a console in the main research lab, the station's logs detailed a descent into madness. Entries spoke of sleepless nights, of sensor readings that defied explanation, of nightmares so vivid they blurred the line between reality and illusion. "The shadows are watching us. I can feel them. They whisper my name. The nightmares, they're getting worse, more real. I saw my family. Dead, all of them, and I was the one who killed them. We can't trust each other anymore. Everyone's paranoid. Everyone's afraid. Something's turning us against each other." A hidden message, scrawled in blood on the back of one of the data slates, sent a chill down Anthony's spine. "They can hear your thoughts. They can control you." Luna, her claws clicking softly against the console, said, "I am detecting a concentrated energy source deep within the station. Sector Gamma 7. It correlates with the periods of heightened neurological activity recorded in the logs." As they approached Sector Gamma 7, the unsettling phenomena intensified. The flickering lights became strobing flashes, the distorted audio a cacophony of whispers and screams. Visual hallucinations flickered at the edges of their vision, fleeting glimpses of grotesque figures, of loved ones twisted into monstrous parodies. A vision of his fallen comrades assaulted Anthony. Their faces, contorted in agony, accusing him. "It's your fault, Wilson. You failed us." He clenched his teeth, focusing on Luna's steady form beside him. Her presence, grounded in logic and reason, was an anchor in the storm of madness. "Stay focused, Luna," he said, his voice tight. "They're trying to get inside our heads." "Acknowledged," she replied, her voice unwavering. "Maintaining optimal cognitive shielding, analyzing the frequency of the psychological assault. Projecting counter-frequencies to disrupt the illusionary matrix." They reached the source of the energy, a pulsating, obsidian sphere suspended in the center of a vast chamber. The sphere radiated a palpable aura of fear, a wave of pure, unadulterated terror that threatened to overwhelm their senses. It was then that they saw them. Emerging from the shadows, their eyes wide and vacant, were the members of the research station crew. Their faces were pale and gaunt, their bodies emaciated. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their hands outstretched, their voices chanting in unison. Protect the source, protect the fear, let it consume them all. They lunged. Anthony drew his sword, the ancient steel singing a song of defiance. Non-lethal force only, he commanded, his voice ringing through the chamber. We need to subdue them, not kill them. He parried a clumsy blow from a crazed scientist, sending him sprawling to the ground. Luna, meanwhile, deployed a series of sonic disruptors, emitting high-frequency bursts that incapacitated several of the attackers. The battle was brief but brutal. The crew members, driven mad by the enemy's influence, fought with a desperate ferocity. But Anthony and Luna, with their training and their unwavering grit, were able to subdue them without causing any permanent harm. As the last of the attackers fell, the obsidian sphere pulsed one final time, then went dark. The illusions dissipated, the distorted audio faded, and the research station returned to a semblance of normalcy. But the silence was heavy, pregnant with the lingering echoes of fear. Luna approached the deactivated sphere, her multi-lensed eyes scanning its surface. The device. It amplifies and transmits fear, she said, her voice grim, broadcasting it across the system, crippling any resistance before it can even form. After several minutes, she looked up. I have identified a vulnerability in the device's core programming, a specific frequency that could disrupt its functionality and potentially sever the connection to its source. As they prepared to depart, a priority transmission blared across the comms system. It was the Galactic Council. Their tone was urgent, demanding. They were ordered to return to Citadel Station immediately to address a growing political crisis. The distress signal, they revealed, was likely fabricated by political opponents to draw them away from the reactor. Reluctantly, Anthony finished, the word hanging in the air of their shuttle as it pierced the atmosphere of the Galactic Council's capital world. He and Luna exchanged a glance. The research station and the secrets it held felt a universe away. The capital, with its gleaming spires and oppressive sense of order, felt like a cage. The moment they disembarked, the atmosphere solidified into hostility. Glances, sharp and distrustful, followed them. Council guards, their faces grim, escorted them not to their quarters but directly to the council chamber. The Grand Hall, usually a symbol of galactic unity, felt like a tribunal. Every eye was on them. Councillor Valerius, a towering figure with a voice that resonated through the chamber, stepped Dr. Wilson, Dr. Luna, he began, his tone filled with accusation. The council demands an explanation. The incident at your research station has caused considerable alarm. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing distorted sensor readings, fragmented communications logs. Evidence, Valerius declared, his voice dripping with disdain, suggests the station's systems were deliberately disabled, that the raid you claim to have discovered was unleashed intentionally. Luna stepped forward, her chitinous fingers flexing. Counselor, my scientific analysis clearly demonstrates the enemy's mastery of psychological warfare. The station's malfunction was a direct result bias. A voice boomed from the assembly. Your affiliation with humanity clouds your judgment, Doctor. Anthony felt his eyes sharpen. He recognized the tactic, isolate, discredit, control. Valerius was a master. He watched the counselor's movements, the subtle shifts in his posture, the carefully chosen words designed to incite fear and distrust. Counselors, Anthony began, his voice calm but firm. With all due respect, Counselor Valerius presents a compelling narrative, but a narrative nonetheless. Ask yourselves, who benefits from sowing discord? Who profits from fear? He paused, letting his words sink in. Is it not the enemy we are supposedly here to protect against? Despite Anthony's measured response, the damage was done. Whispers spread through the chamber. A vote was called to restrict humanity's access to advanced technology, to limit their strategic resources. The air thickened with tension. Back in the research station system, a lone Saurian frigate tasked with monitoring the area blared a klaxon. Red alerts flashed across the bridge. Unidentified energy surge detected. A crew member shouted. Originating from beyond the galactic rim, it's massive. The captain, his scales slick with sweat, barked. Hail the colony, warn them. Static, only static. Communications are blocked, Captain. Jamming signal. They knew we were here. Luna, her face pale, turned to Anthony. The distress signal. It wasn't just a distraction, it was a trap. They're isolating humanity, cutting us off. Anthony's mind raced, flipping through the pages of history. They're using our fear against us, he said, his voice low. Just like they did millennia ago. But fear can be a weapon, Luna, a double-edged sword. We use their fear to create a false sense of security before we strike. Luna nodded, her eyes gleaming with grit. I can amplify a signal of hope, of resilience, broadcast it across the galaxy, counteract their psychological manipulation. But the Council, Anthony began. Damn the Council, Luna hissed, a sentiment he'd never heard her utter before. It requires bypassing their restrictions, using the ancient warship systems. The vote was imminent. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Councillor Valerius smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. The tension in the chamber was palpable, a living thing. Anthony rose to his feet. He looked at the faces of the councillors, the fear etched into their features. He thought of the ancient warship, the rage that still echoed within its metal shell. He thought of the colony, vulnerable and alone. Councillors, he began, his voice ringing with conviction. I stand before you not as a representative of humanity, but as a citizen of this galaxy. We have faced unimaginable horrors. We have made mistakes, but we have also learned. We have persevered. We have always chosen hope over despair. Meanwhile, deep within the bowels of the ancient warship, Luna worked feverishly. Sparks flew as she rerouted power, bypassing safety protocols. Her fingers danced across the alien controls, coaxing the ancient technology back to life. On the colony world, the sky rained fire. Enemy soldiers, their eyes glazed with a terrifying euphoria, poured through the shattered defenses. The screams of the dying filled the air. Anthony, seeing the hollow feeds of the colony's destruction, made a decision. He accessed the classified files, the forbidden knowledge of the ancient war. He released it all, flooding the galactic network with the truth. Chaos erupted in the council chamber. Some screamed in outrage, others stared in stunned silence. But the truth was out, the enemy was real, the threat was imminent. Luna, her face illuminated by the glow of the warship's console, slammed her fist on the activation rune. The signal of hope, a wave of pure, unadulterated defiance, pulsed outwards, washing over the colony, disrupting the enemy's psychological assault. But it also painted a target on their backs. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice filled with malice and triumph. Fools, you have played right into our hands. Councillor Valerius's form shimmered, his features contorting into something monstrous, something alien. Anthony stared, his blood running cold. The choice was upon them. Confront the political viper in their midst, or abandon the council to its fate and race to defend the colony world. Either path guaranteed destruction. The colony burned. Structures that had stood for generations melted under the relentless assault, the air thick with the acrid stench of plasma and despair. But amidst the chaos in the heart of the ancient warship, Anthony Wilson stared at the holographic projections flickering before him. Not at the tactical displays, but at the historical records, the echoes of a war fought millennia ago. He wasn't just seeing the enemy's movements, he was seeing their fear. They rely on it, he murmured, tracing a finger across a tactical readout. Their entire strategy is built on amplifying their own rage, projecting it onto their enemies. Luna's reptilian fingers danced across the warship's control panel, her brow furrowed in concentration. The ancient human technology. It's crude by our standards, but remarkably effective at manipulating emotional states. I believe I can adapt it to create a localized counter-frequency. She hesitated, her voice tinged with uncertainty. But the effects, they are unpredictable. We are playing with minds, Anthony. He met her gaze, his own purpose hardening. We're giving them a chance to have minds again, Luna. They haven't had that in cycles. He paused. Can you do it? Luna nodded, a new persistence in her eyes. I can. The rage dampener field flickered into existence, bathing a section of the battlefield in an invisible wave. The effect was immediate. Enemy soldiers, previously berserk with rage, stumbled, their movements becoming erratic. Their guttural battle cries dissolved into confused whimpers. The tide was turning, not through superior firepower, but through the subversion of their own psychological weapons. What is the meaning of this? Counselor Draconis's voice crackled over the comms, filled with venom. Why are our forces faltering? Before Luna could respond, a new voice cut through the static. Because you sabotaged the planetary defense grid, Draconis. You crippled our ability to protect this colony. Counselor Valerius, his voice tight with controlled fury, stepped forward. I've been monitoring your communications, Draconis. Your allegiance is not to the Galactic Council, but to those who seek to profit from this war. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in pandemonium. Accusations flew, alliances shattered, and the fragile veneer of unity dissolved into chaos. It was in this maelstrom that Anthony stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. Silence. He activated a holographic projector, filling the chamber with irrefutable evidence of Draconis's betrayal. Intercepted communications, financial records, and strategic data proving his collaboration with the enemy. The wavering council members, those who had doubted humanity, stared in stunned silence. Luna then activated her own projector, flooding the chamber with holographic simulations of the ancient war. Not glorious battles, but scenes of unimaginable horror. Planets ravaged by biological weapons, civilians subjected to unspeakable tortures, the systematic eradication of entire species. The council members recoiled, their faces etched with disgust and disbelief. The true face of the enemy, long hidden by propaganda and lies, was now exposed for all to see. A wave of revulsion washed over the Galactic Council. The vote was unanimous. A full-scale counteroffensive was authorized, and all restrictions on humanity's access to technology were lifted. The galaxy was finally united against a common enemy. Anthony and Luna stood side by side on the bridge of a newly commissioned warship, a joint human-saurian vessel, as it led the charge towards the besieged colony. The ancient warship's strategic data, combined with human ingenuity and saurian technology, proved to be an unstoppable force. The rage dampener neutralized the enemy's psychological advantage, while advanced weaponry cleared a path through their defenses. A signal of hope, amplified by the warship's communications array, reverberated throughout the colony. The remaining defenders, battered but unbowed, rallied. Their faces, previously etched with despair, now shone with renewed commitment. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. The enemy's main force was routed. Many surrendered, their minds fractured and disoriented by the rage dampener. The immediate threat was neutralized. The colony was saved. The Galactic Council, chastened by its near-fatal misjudgment, began the arduous task of rebuilding the colony and addressing the underlying causes of the conflict. Draconis and his co-conspirators were brought to justice, their treachery exposed for all to see. Humanity, no longer viewed with suspicion and fear, was recognized as a valuable ally. Its unique perspective, its resilience, and its capacity for empathy were now seen as strengths, not weaknesses. humanity was granted a greater role in galactic affairs, solidifying its place as a respected member of the galactic community. Anthony and Luna, their bond forged in the crucible of war, continued their partnership. They returned to the ancient warship, not as archaeologists or historians, but as guardians of the future. They knew that this was but one battle in a larger war, a war against ignorance, prejudice, and the darkness that lurked within the hearts of all sentient beings. They worked tirelessly, researching new ways to bridge the gaps between species, to foster understanding and empathy, and to build a galaxy where the horrors of the past would never be repeated. They sought new solutions, knowing that technology alone was not enough. The true weapon against darkness, they believed, was light, the light of knowledge, the light of compassion, and the unwavering light of the human spirit.